Elie Wiesel said, neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. What experience do you have that validates this? My mother was abusive and no one, out of the family, friends, and church community who witnessed her physical, violent outbursts, ever stepped in to stop her. Any experience of being bullied in high school, especially when physical assault is involved, neutrality, or punishing both students when one complains against another, gives the aggressive party, if their aim is to make life hard for the victim, no opportunity cost of doing so. If the victim doesn't tell, they get hurt, and if they do tell, they still get hurt. My stepmom was abusive to my brother and I. She was an alcoholic and bipolar. She did things like forcing me to eat out of the garbage or beat me. It wasn't just the physical stuff, but the mental games. One day she'd act nice and kind and the next call me, a 6-year girl, every name in the book. I told my dad and he didn't believe me. Then she did it in front of him and he would do nothing. I'd look to him for help, break down crying, and he did nothing. Because she had free reign, she took her anger out on my brother and I. Because of that, even though I love my dad, I'll never forgive him for not leaving her. I'll hate her till the day I die. A part of me will always resent him too. I have panic disorder and horrible anxiety as an adult. I'm in therapy. However, I still wake up in the middle of the night adrenaline pumping because I had a nightmare about her. I self-mutilated almost all of my teen years. I was suicidal and it took me many years to get to the point where I wasn't considering different plans of killing myself on a daily basis. I grew up in an abusive family. My father is a violent man. He would hit me every time he gets drunk and my mother would always do nothing. For years, I begged her to help me, maybe get out of the house or leave my father. She's basically the enabler and she would always just stood there, straight-faced, while my drunkard father beat the heck out of me. I will never forgive her for doing nothing all this time. So, I was badly bullied. I was self-harming, a redhead, and have always been chubby. Tried to tell one of my teachers about the fact that I was literally being told to go kill myself on the regular. Teacher, in a nutshell, told me that I was making myself a target because of my weight, hair color. To this day, it's been 10 years, I still have issues with respecting authority thanks to that teacher. I am now clean of self-harm and finally on appropriate meds. I'm still chubby, but now it's not so bad. It's a good thing that you don't hurt yourself anymore. Frick that teacher. When I was in school, I was bullied relentlessly by other kids and was always told to ignore them or they'll bully you more. I tried it that way and even when the bullying got physical, the teachers did nothing. One day I was already having a rather bad day, given that my grandpa was dying of cancer. One of the kids laughed and told me my grandpa was going to burn in heck. My sorrow turned into unbridled rage and the kid ended up face-planting on concrete when I grabbed him, threw him down and started jumping up and down on him. The teacher watched him taunting and laughing at me and did nothing. He came to life when I got to stomping. The teacher's logic, STCKSNDS tenez. So I called him a limp dong coward for standing around and watching the bully, then said, stick and stones. I got a week off from school for the remark. I never did forget how it felt to be so consumed by hate and anger and how good it felt to stomp that bastard. I eventually adopted a policy of always stopping bullies with force, whether it was to insult them back when they insulted me, or trying to beat their butt if they laid a hand on me. After a few fights, people started leaving me alone because I was no longer the easiest of targets. I wish I had done that. A classmate and I both had grandpas going through cancer treatments at the same time. Mine passed away and when I came back to school the classmate told me, my grandpa survived because he's strong. If you're not strong, you die. I so wanted to punch him. I instead left the room. Of course got in trouble for leaving the classroom so I should have punched him anyway. I was an organizer of a language exchange group, and one of the other organizers had about a dozen people coming forth with complaints of sexual harassment and bullying. I keep reporting him to the milquetoast person that was in charge. Nothing happens, and then the harasser gets outed elsewhere by someone else. I get in trouble for reporting him in the first place because it made the group look bad and that it's the fault of anyone harassed for not saying no clearly enough. Creep gets kicked out, starts his own group, and last I heard has been routinely abusing his modicum of power and harassing every woman participating. I used to get beat by my dad. I'd have to come to school with bruises on my arms and legs, sometimes my neck and face, bullied by kids at school. I got good at running home, and even molested walking to school by myself. I went to a Catholic school and the nuns did nothing, and in one case, bullied me as well. By 8th grade I was carrying a knife everywhere and the bullying stopped. That sounds like so much to deal with as a child. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Hope you're doing better now. So I was bullied in grade school for being the only guy with curly hair on my class. I reported it multiple times to my teachers but they never did anything. It totally ruined my confidence because there's nothing I could do about my hair except to just shave it every other month. My teachers encouraged me to shave it in order to prevent the bullying from happening. One day, I got tired of their bullshits and punched and bit 2 of my classmates and boom. They all freaked out. They didn't allow me to go to school for 3 weeks and they forced me to apologize to them. Approach to bullying is the best example for this. I also hate schools for that exact reason. The way they handle cases about bullying is unforgivable. When my closest friends chose to stay friends both with myself and the man who sexually assaulted me, they wanted to help me heal, while repeatedly telling me not to go to the police. Therapy helped me see through their bulls. Reported the assault to the police. Never felt so much peace until after I cut them out. Those are definitely not friends. There's our counseling if you need it. Hugs. Telling people about how my ex raped me and they stayed neutral because he was nice to them or because they were friends with him before me. When I, a gay man, left my abuser, also a gay man, I had a friend tell me that she was staying friends with him by saying, "I don't think he's dangerous. Yeah, not to you." I used to be a cashier at a grocery store so I get mad when I see people being rude to them. When I lived in Canada for a bit I was standing in line at a store to buy something and the behind me started getting angry about having to wait and then he dropped the old "she should go back where she came from" about the obviously non-white cashier. I couldn't stop myself turning around and in my most broad Aussie accent I said, "She can't help that there's a line, mate." No freaking come back to that one. Apparently, because I guess white people don't have to go back to where they came from. Anyway, the cashier thought it was nice of me and I just said, "Hey, I know you're not allowed to respond so the least I can do as a customer is tell rude idiots to frick off on your behalf. If you've got any kind of position of privilege and you can use it to give someone else a voice, even if it's a stupid little interaction like that, just do it." Most of the time people aren't expecting a rebuff for their actions. They don't even think before they say that crap. If you don't say something back, it just normalizes it. I believe that the only message bullies will ever get is a mess of violence. I saw this firsthand in my school. There was a kid who wasn't really my friend but we were nice to each other. This kid was relentlessly bullied by the jocks or whatever you classify them as. This went on from 5th grade to sophomore year, which was last year. This kid constantly told teachers and they said there was nothing they could do if they didn't see it happen. Note, there is a huge bias towards the athletes at my school which would basically make the teachers super nice and forgiving towards the athletes. So one day after 6 years of verbal and physical abuse, this kid finally had enough. When one of the kids pushed him against the locker, he turned and just knocked his lights out, as well as a few teeth. He kept kicking him on the face and stomach even though he was already out cold. Teachers got there and pulled away. He got suspended and the other kid spent a week in the hospital. When they both came back, there was an investigation and all of the kids who were present said that the bully clearly started it and my friend was just defending himself. It's now junior year and absolutely no one messes with him anymore. Your friend's a badass. Relevant background. Elie Wiesel was a Holocaust survivor who went on to win the 1986 Nobel Prize for Peace. Art's quote is from Wiesel's Nobel acceptance speech. Other Nobel Peace Prize winners have expressed similar thoughts. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Desmond Tutu, quoted in Unexpected News, reading the Bible with third world eyes, 1984. I agree with Dante that the hottest places in heck are reserved for those who in a period of moral crisis maintain their neutrality. There comes a time when silence becomes betrayal. Martin Luther King Jr. Speech at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, the 30th of April 1967. I was bullied when I was younger. The teachers always pretended they were doing the right thing, ignoring it and not supporting anyone. This is pretty common, even now. A lot of teachers just want the minimum amount of fuss and forget that kids are experiencing the formative events of their lives in the classroom. Bullying peer aggression has lifelong consequences, and most schools seem to have just decided it's easier to quiet the victim. Being sexually assaulted in the military. After I reported it, other women came forward. I had some proof of his behavior and also submitted it. Many people I served with would say they didn't want to get into it or wanted to stay neutral. I felt ashamed, terrified and mostly hopeless. Nothing like being stuck on a ship with 4,000 men. During my PhD, I ended up in a toxic relationship with my first supervisor. Pretty much everyone in the department was effectively all you must have both done something wrong. So I'm not going to get involved, completely ignoring the power dynamic at play. I ultimately had to transfer supervisors and universities to get out of that environment and finish, because it's not exactly like we were equals. I am obviously summarizing a very complicated and painful situation in just a few lines. But honestly, the reactions of other people in that department who could have done something but didn't care enough to do so upset me in the long run more than that supervisor's. It's one thing to deal with an butthole who keeps being an butthole, and another when a community you've been a part of for several years just shrugs their shoulders. Preach. Supervisor drama is the worst. When I was in nursing school, I was assaulted. Co-workers saw, classmates saw, but since I was 18 and they told me that normally people get in this program in their 30s, they thought I deserved it because I don't belong there. In fact, since no one did anything, I almost got charged for rape. This makes me so dang angry. My friend was molested by her stepfather as a child. The 1 year her mom and stepdad put her in public school, she told a teacher what was happening at home. The school then called, not the police, but her mom and stepdad, who came in and denied everything. Mom was complicit. He would molest the daughter in the bed while mom was in it. The teacher didn't believe her. She was raped for the next 5 years by that man, who promptly took her out of school and homeschooled her so he had unfettered access. They were Jehovah's Witnesses and he was an elder in the church, so she literally had no one to go to. The police probably wouldn't even have believed her, either. Now the mom and stepdad are hoity-toity more righteous than thou Jehovah's Witnesses far away. He ended up getting paralyzed in an accident, so my friend gets some small consolation that his dong no longer works and won't for the rest of his life. Stories like this make me wish there was a God so these people would get the justice they deserve. Didn't get help for my PTSD for 5 years after getting out of the situation, even though I brought it up as a possibility and asked for psychotherapy often. Once my grandpa died, my requests for fit therapy were met with, if anyone has PTSD, it's probably me, and yeah, turns out I do have PTSD and probably have severely impacted my ability to live normally by not getting psychotherapy ASAP. If your kid routinely brings up how they want to see a professional for mental health issues, just freaking let them see a professional. Worst case scenario, they realize they're having normal feelings and don't need medical help. Best case scenario, they realize they have a severe mental illness and can start working to treat it before it permanently impacts their ability to live. Also, my parents had insurance coverage for it, so yes, they could afford it. I feel that parents wouldn't pay for therapy till I started cutting and dangled off a parking garage. Being neutral or trying to show with my face and voice I was uncomfortable doesn't make creepy guys go away. I grew up in a family where we didn't really teach boundaries and I have a hard time with it to this day. Shouting, "Go away, leave Emmy alone," is the only way to get creepy guys on the streets to frick off every time. Slow creepy smiles, weird walks, and saying weird crap in response gets rid of them too. Barking and unintelligible screaming are also lovely options. I've never tried duck walking away from them while squawking, but I think that would be a decent one to try. That and blowing raspberries while pretending to fart with every step would also work well, I think. I was raped at 12, the offender was 19. I found out that my being underage has no bearing on the court records being public. Only the age of the offender matters. My name and address were all over the paperwork. There's our app counseling if you need it. Hugs. I was a part of a small tight-knit gaming community. It was maybe 40 people who met up twice a week to play the game, and people were pretty close friends with each other. Then one day one player physically assaulted their significant other, also a part of the community, in front of a bunch of people. I was horrified by the group's apathy. Literally, people who watched it happen were like, I don't know what's going on in their relationship. I can't judge. You viewed the domestic violence. Abuse is what's happening in the relationship. The victim ended up having to leave the community they had helped build and had been a part of for 3 years to get away from the abuser, and the abuser got to stay. Frick the people who let that happen. Did you say anything or stick up for her? I've dealt with several instances of unacceptable verbal abuse and misogyny while working for startups, in particular several that are associated with a very famous incubator. In general, my experience is that if an abuser holds more power, more equity, more seniority, wealthier friends, etc., seeking help from neutral parties is useless. Neutrality will always reinforce a power structure that already exists. I was ousted from a company that I helped found because my co-founder, who owned more equity, became erratic, and the only way I was able to salvage some kind of payout for my equity and avoid a predatory settlement was thanks to one investor who actively took even the other partners of her VC fund continued to be neutral and are still happy to be associated with my ex-co-founder. Mentors from the very famous incubator stood aside while my colleague abused me and sabotaged other relationships with poor choices. Through the incubator's neutral relationship with a law firm, my co-founder attempted to get me to sign a settlement agreement that was a legal nightmare. When I notified a community organizer for the incubator that my lawyer had found extremely troubling language in the documents that their associated law firm provided, they told me that it wasn't their problem because they were just associated with the firm and didn't directly approve the documents. After leaving the company, I was told that the wisest thing would be to move on and pretend like nothing happened. That I basically had to be neutral in my own language about what happened. I couldn't tell peers or industry friends the truth. It was heartbreaking to interview for new roles and have to make up stories about why I would so suddenly leave a company that had been such an important part of my life for years. After a year of attempting to work with other startups, and seeing shades of the same behavior and enablement over and over again, I'm doing my best to never work in the industry again. If you wonder why there aren't more women in leadership in the industry, or why so many platforms have become known for their toxic culture, neutrality on the part of investors, mentors, and peers is a huge problem. If you witness abuse or toxic behavior in a professional setting, you should know that being neutral won't save you from the same behavior, and standing up for someone who is the victim will win you their respect for life. To this day, I honestly have more respect for people who told me they were actively taking the side of my co-founder for personal or financial reasons than all of the people who told me they were just being neutral. Last time I visited home, June 2020, my dad was talking about how much he disliked all those gays during the announcement that the Supreme Court was making discrimination against sexual gender orientation a legal offense. I spoke up in the middle of him talking to point out that I'm bisexual. All those gays includes me. He shut up pretty fast and even gave a half apology later. Said he wouldn't think it was right for someone to fire me over it. It was good to hear that from him. Hostile work environment, especially in a stagnant job market. Even if it's egregious workplace harassment, racism, sexual harassment, what have you, people notice but won't say crap because they need their jobs. I can't say I blame anyone for being neutral, as everyone needs their job, as the system is really stacked against the wronged employee. In most cases. People refusing to take sides when they're friends with both parties in a breakup. My ex was emotionally abusive and completely wrecked my self-esteem, but our mutual friends don't want to hear that about him. They still hang out with him and talk about what a great friend he is. It makes me feel like they don't care about how he treated me, and the lasting damage that relationship has done to me. Every time I start a new job, some sucker says, I don't wanna say what I earn, it is not polite to talk about. Sucker, It is only the owner of the company that benefits from the workers not comparing salary. All you do by not wanting to compare is worse chances when you have to discuss pay rise with your boss. Not you. FFS people apparently like to be slaves as low paid workers these days. I worked for a large company that had this policy. On my team I was higher paid than half of the people. The others were near me by at least $20,000. We did the exact same job. Same job description. Same title. $20,000 pay discrepancy. It made me so angry. I wanted to file a lawsuit on their behalf when I quit. Boss sexually harassed me. Other bosses saw it and didn't stop it even when I begged for help. And when I reported it, I got demoted and quit. One of the bosses who saw it was a woman. That's the very short version. When I was a kid, many years ago, my stepmom convinced my dad that I'd started stealing things from them I wasn't. The first time it happened, they kept me awake until almost 3 in the morning questioning me about it. I finally gave in and admitted it so I could get some sleep. Of course, the next time this came up, my admission from the last time was used against me and they didn't stop until I admitted that one too, which in turn fueled the next time, and the next. This all went on for several years and towards the end, it was multiple things per day that had gone missing, or were hidden somewhere. This was when they found something I'd supposedly stolen, or pranks that were being played on them. I wasn't doing any of it but I gave up protesting my innocence early on in this process. There were tons of neutral parties in all of this and they weaponized every single one of them against me. The entirety of my dad's family believed his version of events without question, and they probably still do. I've had next to no relationship with most of them since early childhood. They took me to therapists and I had to lie to these therapists and say that I was doing these things because obviously they were reporting back to my parents. They had my teachers looking out for things in the classroom that went missing. Oddly, none of them ever saw anything like this. They roped our church staff into it and a woman I'd known since I was probably 3 or 4 told me that she was really sad to hear that I was going to heck. They constantly told me how ashamed all of these neutral parties were of me, how I was letting them all down and they would never forgive me. In reality, most of these people probably never thought twice about any of this crap, but the fact that they never gave any amount of pushback on any of it helped my dad and stepmom keep up the illusion. Don't be buttholes to your kids, people. My sister is gay. My dad and his wife are staunch Republicans. His wife makes endless, conservative, microaggressive comments during any kind of extended family or holiday dinner. My grandmother and I are the only ones that ever called her out on the homophobic ones. I got banned from his home for a year after doing so, but now grandma's dead. I live in another state and have made the choice to sparsely attend family events. Sister still goes to them sometimes. What does the rest of the family expect? For my little sis to just sit there and ignore her so there's no boat rocking? No one ever defends her, and no one calls stepmom out. Luckily, my sister rarely sees them anymore, but the first few years of it really fricked her up. I won't go into detail, but we have major bullies in our neighborhood. Bored Sams, who screenshot people's texts or FB posts and post them on a neighborhood drama page. Yes, there is an entire FB page dedicated to bullying Sams by Sams in my small neighborhood. Welcome to the South. There are 2 moms who try to be neutral, so they're on the drama page and don't say anything about anyone but do basically point and laugh when bullies say or post things about others. Don't defend anyone. It's been about 4 years of this and it's gotten so bad we have had 3 or 4 families sell their homes to get away from it. Of everything in this thread, I'm shocked by these adult bullies. That's terrible. When I, was about 12 years old, my friend, about 13 at the time, and another guy, about our age, were going home from basketball practice. I was walking lazy and dragging my feet on the street, as I was tired after running, and the sound from my shoes being dragged on the street was an excuse for a group of 3 girls, about 16 years old at the time, to get mad and look for a fight. They started yelling at me and cursing, and my friend, a much braver person than myself, started yelling back. One of the older girls started pulling on my friend's hair, and then another one punched her. I tried to jump in and save her, but they knocked me down to the ground and kicked me. They held my friend on the ground also, and because she was still trying to fight back, one of the girls spit on her face. We both had bruises on our legs, abdomen and rib area, where they kicked us when we were down. Remember I said there was also a guy with us? He just stood and watched as we were getting beaten up by some strangers, a group of 3 older girls. We really didn't stand a chance. When I asked him why he didn't do something, he said that man can't fight women and he thought it was better if he stayed neutral. The point is, if he would have at least stopped them from kicking us or called for an adult to come help us, maybe we wouldn't have gotten beaten up random so badly on the street by 3 strangers. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.